Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because we are going to break down an incredibly chilling first-hand account of a local legend. We're going to systematically explore a story of pure terror, an isolated school, and a really tragic piece of local history. It is a gripping narrative, and by mapping it out together today, we'll see exactly how a completely normal evening can escalate into something completely unimaginable.
So what exactly happens when a totally normal late-night study session turns into a full-blown paranormal encounter? Well, that's exactly what we're going to piece together today. We're going to look at the evidence of one student's terrifying night to understand the mechanics of fear and local lore. Now, this wasn't a dare, it wasn't urban exploration gone wrong. It was literally just a student trying to prepare for final exams who accidentally found themselves at the center of a ghost story.
Okay, let's jump right into the first part of our timeline, the late-night study at the Eden Hill School Library.
Now, usually the school library shuts down around 5 o'clock, but because final exams were coming up, the school decided to keep it open until midnight, so our student arrives around 6 p.m. Normally, they'd pack it up and head home by 8, and even then, there'd still be a few other kids around. But on this specific night, they just got completely absorbed in their studying. Before they even realized it, the clock hit 10 p.m., and suddenly, there was absolute silence. Realizing they only had about 10 or 15 minutes of prep left, they figured, hey, I'll just finish this up quickly and head out. But, that is right when the environment completely shifted.
That absolute deafening silence? Yeah, it didn't last long. Out of nowhere, while totally lost in their work, the student heard the very distinct sound of someone limping nearby, just a heavy, dragging step. Obviously, the reaction was immediate. Driven by this sudden, massive spike of fear, they hurriedly threw their books into their bag and literally ran out of that quiet library. Now, the layout here is important to understand how this builds. Right outside the library is this really long corridor, and you have to go all the way to the end and turn right to get to the actual exit door. The student is basically speed-walking down this hall, trying to get out, when they see something alarming. A mysterious woman is standing right at the very end of the corridor. The student has absolutely no idea who she is, but with every single step closer, this deep, heavy feeling of dread just keeps escalating.
It gets so incredibly uncomfortable that they finally reach a breaking point. The student just calls out into the empty hallway, "Who's there?" And guys, the response to that was nothing short of terrifying, because as soon as those words left their mouth, the woman vanished. Gone, literally within seconds.
Which brings us to the next chapter of this encounter, the empty walk home, down a strangely deserted street.
So the student finally pushes through the front doors, letting out this massive sigh of relief. They're exhausted, they're hungry, barely even able to walk properly at this point. But that sense of relief vanishes almost instantly once they step outside. Why? Because the street was completely empty. And to put that into perspective, on a normal night, this particular road is always busy. Even late at night, there are always people walking around. But on this night, strangely, entirely deserted. It was an unnatural void that just cranked their terror right back up.
You really have to put yourself in their shoes here to understand their psychological state. They are navigating this abnormally dead street right after a highly distressing event inside the school. They are in such a state of sheer panic and fear that they just keep their eyes completely glued to the ground while they walk, desperately praying they can just make it home without seeing anything else.
But unfortunately, looking away wasn't going to protect them. Let's move into the climax of the story, the terrifying encounter triggered by a shadow on the ground.
Let's methodically break down exactly how this unfolded. Step 1. The student is getting closer to home when suddenly a shadow stretches out onto the ground right in front of them, even though there was absolutely no one around. Step 2. They slowly lift their head and they see a woman walking just ahead of them. She appeared disabled, moving incredibly slowly and with a lot of difficulty. Step 3. Because she was moving at such a snail's pace, the student caught up to her in no time. And that's when they got a clear, horrifying look. She was wearing tattered, filthy clothes. Her hair was a complete mess. And most unsettling of all, her hands and feet appeared physically twisted. Which brings us to step 4. Every gut instinct was screaming at the student not to get any closer. Lacking the courage to even try and walk past her, they just stopped dead in their tracks, totally frozen in absolute shock.
I mean, think about it for a second. How do you answer a strange question from an actual ghost? Because that is exactly what happens next. The entity poses a bizarre question to the student, and the student? Completely frozen. Brain totally numb from the shock, they couldn't utter a single word to respond.
Overcome by just a sheer, primal urge to survive, and desperately wanting this woman to go away, the student relied on body language. Out of paralyzing fear, they literally just raised an arm and pointed far, far away into the distance. And amazingly, the twisted woman followed the direction. She limped away toward where they pointed, and she kept walking until she completely disappeared from sight.
But her disappearing didn't exactly bring peace. Let's look at the immediate aftermath: the scream in the dark and the desperate escape.
With the woman out of sight, this intense, new paranoia kicked in. The student was absolutely terrified she might just instantly reappear right in front of them. So, the survival instinct takes completely over. They ran as fast as humanly possible. Their brain was numb to everything else. The singular driving focus was just finding someone who could help. They were desperately searching the dark streets for a car, a person, anyone to shatter this nightmare.
And then, right in the middle of that frantic sprint, a sound pierces the night. From far, far away, they hear that exact same woman screaming. And the words she screamed, "She is here!" The gravity of that distant, echoing shout was just the final blow. Immediately after hearing those words, the student's memory simply goes black.
The sheer physical and psychological toll of the whole encounter was just way too much. The student completely passed out right there on the ground. Later on, when they finally regained consciousness, they learned that a neighbor had actually found them lying unconscious in the street and brought them safely home. And that concludes the direct first-hand experience of our protagonist.
But hold on, because the explainer is not over yet. That neighbor provided a crucial piece of historical context that changes the entire lens of this story. Let's dive into the legend of Agatha and the tragic truth behind the haunting of Eden Hill.
So the neighbor shares a local legend dating back to 1998. It centers all around a 32-year-old woman named Agatha. Agatha is remembered as a deeply grieving mother. According to the lore, it's her ghost that roams Eden Hill School and the surrounding streets, endlessly searching for her deceased child.
And the number 10 is absolutely central to this tragedy. Agatha had a 10-year-old daughter who was actually a student at Eden Hill School. One tragic day, while the little girl was just playing with her friends on the school grounds, she suffered a fatal accident and died.
This is what brings the emotional weight of our whole timeline to its peak. The history explains that Agatha simply could not bear the thought of losing her child. Because of this profound, unresolvable grief, Agatha's spirit became tied to the physical location of the school. That's exactly why that twisted, desperate figure was roaming the library corridors and those dark streets. She is stuck, still wandering, hoping against hope to be reunited with her 10-year-old daughter. It suddenly frames that strange question, the eerie limping, and that terrifying distant scream of "She is here!" in an entirely new, heart-wrenching light.
And that leaves us with a final thought to ponder. Was the student's late-night encounter a terrifying paranormal threat to be escaped? Or was it simply the tragic, broken echoing of a mother desperately looking for her lost child in the dark? It is a really haunting question, and it completely shifts how we view the shadowy figures in our local legends. Thank you so much for joining me to break down the Eden Hill encounter today. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll catch you next time on The Explainer.